Hi, and welcome to the Stadia Source quick discussion. I'm just going to welcome our guests here in. First guest is Stadia Weekly One. Thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, first time being on. It's cool. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, thank you for joining us here. Our next guest is a regular on the show. It's Chase from Stadia Talk.
What's going on, everybody?
And
Chase.
And our last guest is Rokk. Hi, Rokk.
Hey, Duncan. Hey, Stadia Weekly One. Hey, Mr. Stadia Talk.
Hey, how are you, my friend?
I'm absolutely well. After yesterday, mate. I mean, I think we're all buzzing, aren't we? What an amazing day!
Yeah, definitely. That was a really awesome event, and I'm really looking forward to the next time we get a chance to do it.
Yeah, and I do want to say something real quick, and I put up a video. We did that 10-minute video montage, and one thing that I realized after I put my video out there and already had cut it is that Stadia Source was a massive reason for that event yesterday, and I think it's very important that we say thank you to you guys over there at Stadia Source, because you're the glue of this community. You're the hub, and without you, we don't come together. Yeah, absolutely, we don't come together in the ways that we do. So thank you so much for helping sponsor the event and hosting it.
And so you guys get information, that helps inform us, and stuff that we don't even see half the time, such as what we're I guess going to discuss today, because I knew about a little bit of it, but not in this way. So yeah, that's an important thing too for the community, and that's great.
I think us at Stadia Sources we just like promoting everybody in the community. We just put it out there, and we just try our best to get everybody involved. So it wasn't about us; it was about the whole community out there, and everybody showcasing how good they are. So we are here to discuss our interview from MCV Develop, and they interviewed a couple of Google employees, including the first one here, which we're going to talk the project. I can't say it. Chimera. What's that? Have I butchered?
Chimera.
Chimera. I'm awful of pronunciations, so I may need help in this.
Yeah.
So this article, I'm going to link it below, basically explain what all Google is looking forward to in the future. So I think, Rokk, do you mind me dropping you in it here? Because I think you did a video a couple of days ago about this.
Yeah, it was a little bit long, a couple of weeks ago. But so, yeah, essentially what the article is saying is there's an interview. And do you know what I find fascinating, just prefacing what I'm going to say here, is we seem to get the biggest nuggets of knowledge from the work that the interviews that Google do with other developers. In this case, it's a developer magazine. I mean, and I think, to be fair to them, that just underlines the fact that they are, at the end of the day, a company of engineers, and they're more comfortable talking with people who understand their language and get their vision and their challenges. So, hats off to the guys for finding this. And essentially, it's an interview with Erin Hoffman-John, who heads up Star Labs, which is the offshoot, the kind of skunk works, if you like, over at Google. And her job is essentially to project forward with the technologies that they have today and the technologies that they're going to create and are creating to a world in 5 years hence, where where they can bring completely new ways of thinking to game development specifically, with what they've currently got. So the article talks about predominantly machine learning. And machine learning is in essence where you train a piece of software to think to a degree, think for itself. So you give it a certain amount of parameters and allow it to put those parameters together and come up with something new. So in this case, there's a few things that they're working on, according to the article. Game balancing is a big one, and that's essentially, if you imagine within a game, when you're say, let's take Division 2, and you're shooting the baddies. Now, the game knows exactly where you are, right? It knows what weapons you've got. It knows everything about you. The game could just go and you're dead. So they have to balance it. What they put in little kind of random things that slow down the character that's aiming at you, that makes, it makes it off aim slightly and reduces the amount of power it's got. That's called balancing. So in essence, it's the way that you can play the game at your level without getting killed every time, because it feels like you're really, the AI, as we call it, the artificial intelligence, feels like you're playing against a real person. That's the balancing. But that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff within the development of a game, if you think about it, that can be automated to an extent. And what Star Labs are working on is a whole bunch of tools that can completely bring back the time it takes to develop these aspects of a game. And they talk about, for example, a program where they're teaching using something called semantics machine learning, semantics ML, which is undoubtedly, and they say in the game that actually they didn't have to do a lot of coding. And I think it's a bit dangerous, because you can read that and think that's because the software did the thinking. It's not necessarily true. What she's talking about in the article is that Google has a bunch of assets already that they can plug into, and that then allows them to develop their own machine learning techniques. And I think the best way to think about this is a little bit like the space program back in the 70s and 60s. In fact, 60s, I beg your pardon. So in essence, there's a huge drive to be the first man on the moon, which in itself gets a massive amount of investment. And because it has to be done in such a short time, they're developing new processes and technologies, which then find their way into the greater world in the form of other products and processes. Things like non-stick pans, for example, Teflon. Teflon came out of the space program, wouldn't have existed if it didn't have the investment. And Google, in essence, are in a similar space race. Their space race is to match the searches of people in the Google search engine with a page of data, of content that is meaningful to them. So they've applied, and they apply it on the fly, semantic machine learning, which looks at the string of text. And I'm always saying to people, don't try and be clever with Google. Just type out the sentence as if you were asking a real human, because they've written code that takes that and turns it into a search and delivers the results you're after. Now, if you take the code, if you take the semantic programming that they've done there and apply it to a game, for example, you've suddenly got an ability for a character to talk to you in a real world scenario and understand what it is that you're trying to get your character to do. So that's just a simple example of what they're working on and how they're taking the effort that they've already put in at Google for the last few decades and applying it moving forward into the development of games. Can you imagine being able to take the various layers of a game? And I'll wind up, because I know you've pushed my passion button here, mate. I'm sorry about this. If you imagine a game is essentially a bunch of layers. So you've got the world, you've got the physics in the world, you've got the characters, you've got the balance that we've just mentioned with the adversaries, and you've got the story, and you've got how the user progresses within that. And if you take all of those elements, the only piece in that currently that couldn't be in some way enhanced with artificial intelligence and machine learning is the story, because that requires in-depth cultural and artistic input, which is largely down to an individual and the way they've made their way through the world. But it will come eventually. For now, every other aspect can in some way be enhanced. And that's what Star Labs are working on. And that's predominantly what this article says.
Just want to jump in here. There was actually two parts of the article. The first part was the Project Chimera. I'm going to just hopefully say that right. And the second part was the semantic ML.
That's right.
Machine learning. I think we should tackle the Project Chimera part first. Basically, what they were saying in the article, there was a nice article or part of the article saying this is a direct quote from or I can't say her name. I'm just having a disaster. I think it was because of yesterday. I think everybody's wrecked. What if a team of 14 people could build World of Warcraft? Basically, this project is taking a lot of the heavy lifting away from the developers. They mentioned in the article that 70% of the development time is actually building content for the game. So this system is trying to help push this out, so it takes out the heavy lifting from it. Just giving a wee quick rundown, and we'll have the panels all discussions. They actually have built a card game using this project, so that's very interesting. You know, this is a card game, and one of the games I have been banging on, what we should get in Stadia, is Slay the Spire. So I think that's a good one there, and that could actually be built into more Stadia-only features. A key thing here, which I know a lot of the people in the community are concerned about, Stadia is dying. Stadia won't last so that well. And I think Rokk's got actually, Rokk, if you still got that quote there.
Yeah, I'll just pop it up for you a second. There we go. Let's pop that over there. Give me 2 seconds.
No problem. But we're looking long-term, 5 or more years into the future, which was part of the bigger quote. Is that okay for me to show now, or just leave it for a sec?
Sorry, 1 second.
No worries. So Stadia is looking further into the future than a lot of people of us realize here. They're not looking even 1 or 2 years. They are looking 5 and plus. This is the quote here. By applying machine learning to both recreating the character designs and game's balancing, Stadia is opening the doors to smaller teams to create unique and well-balanced experience that otherwise would have been too complicated, time-consuming, and expensive to create, which is all in support of Google's that's a new one, isn't it? Google's own next billion gamers goal. We work backwards from this question of what does this mean to unlock the next billion gamers? We're thinking very long term, looking 5 or more years into the future. The big thing is what to do. I'm flipping struggling to be able to use Stadia's accessibility to reach billions of people. So, Stadia Weekly One, what's your take on this?
Well, when you look at what they're trying to do, that next billion gamers is everybody. Basically, everybody on this planet is or could be a gamer in their target market. There's no like demographics or anything like that they're going for. It's just everybody. And so when you look at stuff like this that makes things easier for the developers to make games and make really good, interesting, complex games with simple word text technology and things like that. And also, this is something that could be implemented with through Stadia makers. This is going to make for games coming out a lot easier, a lot faster, and like I said, with less time and less money spent, because a lot of the stuff that they were talking about in that article was saying that, you know, a lot of the things that takes up the most time is just the testing and the repetition of creating certain things over and over and over again. Now they don't have to do that. They create it once, drop it into the game, and then it's, you know, and then they tell it how many times they needed to do it and whatever, and the game just it creates it on its own. I mean, that is just mind-blowing possibilities that you're just not going to get anywhere else, at least not yet, you know. But that's the potential of this platform, and that was one of the things that drew me in, is just the fact that they have so much forward thinking, and that you can't just look at everything with Stadia in the now. You have to kind of see the now for what it is, but understand, keep an eye on where it's going, and, you know, keep all of those things kind of in perspective when you're seeing stuff like this coming out, that and just the amount of stuff that they're working on is mind-boggling, seriously.
Chase, what's your thoughts on this?
I almost pulled an Eddie. So I think the entire, like, if folks haven't read this article, number one, you absolutely need to go read it. I think you need to stop what you're doing, take 10 minutes, and really digest what's being said in here, because there's some interesting things that this has been talked about since, I'm trying to think of when we first kind of heard the rumblings of
sometime last year.
Yeah, so the E3, there was some conversation. Gamescom, there was some conversation. They've been talking about wanting to do a large-scale game. And when I say they, I mean Google. 24/7 living, breathing world, building that landscape.
Ready Player One.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, either themselves or working with a developer. And I think there's two facets to this that are fascinating. I think the first is this speeds up lead times in game development. This is going to change how we think about how games are developed now, because they're trying to speed up those times.
Exactly.
Especially in the world we live in right now. That's a massive advantage on their side. So again,
Yes.
this might play into what NASDAQ was seeing with the cloud gaming piece, because they're looking at all of the tech that they have in their portfolio. And then I think to take it further, and this is the next big piece, is that the amount of balancing and testing that this is going to allow them to do. And I do want to say something here real quick, and I'll try to keep this brief. Folks have to understand something. Normally when you have play tests, they can take months to get users in, get real-time data, all that stuff.
Feedback, all of that stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So
and the implementation and all of those things.
Right. Yeah. It's insanity. And this is going to allow Google to potentially do this in hours, with millions of AI users giving them real-time data on what's going on in the game. They can then transpose and take a couple characters that were already built and create a super character, which is why they named it Chimera. There's so many different options in here that help Google on their end. And I think the big takeaway for me is, one, we're going to see faster game development. That's a given. That's exactly what they're working towards. And
Yeah.
two, we are absolutely going to see a 24/7 living, breathing MMO RPG world. They've been telling us that. I keep saying to folks, unless they say otherwise, you can't not believe them at this point. This is just another reason that shows that that's what they're about to do. And that's my take on it.
And that's going to change gaming. It's going to like I mentioned the Ready Player One as the example for that, because that's the main example that we have of something of that scale. And for that to be fantasy, and now could possibly be a reality in the next 5 to 10 years. That's just insane to even think about. I mean, yeah.
And I think, and there's a point that Tresorector makes in the chat, which is a fair point I was going to make as well. Is this going back to my early point that said that Google really open up when they're talking to developers. None of this is us looking at the gantry behind a David Blaine trick, right?
Yeah,
they're never going to show this magic in the detail that we're analyzing it, because that is not what they're about. And we're kind of speculating around how they're knitting stuff together, but for most of their market, they don't want them to know this. I said in it was the last recorded Stadia Rocks that I did, number 8, a couple of weeks ago. I kind of imagined a future Stadia where, for example, the user would a gamer would essentially be able to choose the game they want to play from a menu of, the kind of world they want to be in, the kind of characters they'd like to have in it, whether it's a multiplayer, whether it's a solo game, whether it's a this, or that, and the other. And they'd make a choice, and it'd be really simple UI, and the AI would develop their game for them on the fly, and they'd play it. And if they like it enough, they could even maybe put it into a user store and sell it for a portion of revenue. Those are the kinds of places that I think will eventually end up, where games are no longer sold on the basis of buying a publisher's title, but based on what you want to play today, and then you craft the game, or Stadia, their cloud power computing, crafts the game for you and delivers up exactly what you want to play on that day.
Can I just, Duncan, if you're cool with this, and I don't know, tell me to stop if this is where you're, okay, thank you. I was going to say, tell me to stop if you're going to actually talk about this in a second, because I'll hold off. But I want to add something to what Rokk is saying, is that in this article, one of the things that I found the most fascinating, besides the quote that you just posted up, was in regards to the ML and the machine learning aspect of them using just language, basic language and verbs and nouns of the character, which they used 2 foxes as an example to do this testing, where the fox would just basically associate a word with an action. So, hey, what's the weather like? And the fox would run over to the window and try to see what the weather is. That's not code base. That's not coding. That's machine. That's almost high level thought processing that has to come from coding that's happening from just basic language ML. And this stuff is, folks, this is advanced stuff. And this is, here's, and I'm sorry, Red, real quick, let me just add this in here. This is what Google is asking us to pay for. When folks ask, what's the value to dollar proposition? This is proprietary stuff, folks. This is stuff you're not seeing over on other platforms.
Yeah, the thing that, well, if we're gonna, talk about that, like the thing that stuck out to me was, when they talk about the playtesting part. I know Trev was saying that they could just give us demos to do the play testing and everything, and they'll have all the data that they need. But we're talking that takes months and months and months to gather that stuff from humans, from us, because we have to get the feedback to them, and they have to then go through the process of implementation and then getting us more feedback and blah blah blah. With this, what they're talking about is they're talking about doing millions of play tests in an hour. In hours or however long, which would take us months to a year to do. They're talking about hours. So that's just that in itself is just, you have to just like see that. And that's just, my mind can't even comprehend that.
Yeah, you're right.
My mind can't even comprehend. You're talking about playing the game millions of times and then getting feedback from all of these different AIs, and they're telling you this is what's working, this doesn't, this is too out of balance, this is not, blah blah blah, and then you can just immediately within a day get that information and then implement it and then replay test it a million times over a course of an hour and see if this works. And then you're shaving like 6, 7, 8 months of just data collecting off of game development with that.
Yeah, you're right. And so you can I think the point you made earlier about the makers program, that was a really good
Stadia
point.
makers, yeah,
that's a really good point.
Developers.
Yep.
Just imagine them having their stuff unlocked, their imaginations unlocked with this.
Yeah. That's it. Just go with your creativity. And I think phase one of all of this work is absolutely that. It's enabling the way that developers currently work to do it in a more flexible and fluid fashion to get their titles to market quicker. That's phase one. Phase two is actually deep machine learning, deep coding, which essentially starts to craft a lot of these elements using AI and actually circumvents the developers entirely, which will frighten them. But as I mentioned earlier, there are certain aspects of development that we're years and years and years away from. But that's how I kind of see the projection for them. Phase one is to help and make things fast, to make them get to market quicker. Phase two is Star Trek stuff. It's just another world.
Yeah. For me, this is more exciting than the SSDs, the teraflops, all that sort of stuff. All that. Right. This is what's going to change gaming for everybody. Since we started talking about the cymatic ML, this was an interview with.
Bless him.
Yes, I'm having an awful time here.
When most people can't understand you anyway, but you can't even understand yourself. I mean, that's bad.
I know. Tell me about it. I struggle with everybody's names and everything under the sun, and I'm having to say all this strange stuff.
It's the triple S high, Yeah. Still riding off. We're still riding off a Stadia Super Saturday. So
exactly what it is.
I'm just going to go through this semantic. I can't say it.
Semantic ML.
Yeah, and can someone just give me a slap in the head, please, to wake me up?
Oh, Duncan, we love you.
Anna Kipis or whatever. This is an interview with her. Basically, this allows interactions through word association. So if you put in, the example was the fox, where you said she typed in things, I would like a coffee, and the fox went and got her a coffee mug, and all that was done in plain English. What I was saying there was just, it was not in code, but just in normal English. Dear help. If I started trying to write some of this, I can't even speak English at the best of times, never write it down. I would completely confuse everything. This tool actually allows you to tweak the final outcome. So let's say that we have a sad fox. So when you interact with it, it would actually change depending on how you program it. And this is a big takeaway as well. I thought this was a good comment, is as a developer, you don't have to anticipate every possible idea a player has. And the developers can also tweak the code as well. And it was going back to what you guys were talking about, they are putting up samples so people can actually go in and edit them and have a play about with them. So this is really, really interesting. Can I also say to our amazing chat out there, I'm going to do like a Q&A session shortly after. So if you have any questions, just chuck it out there. I'm just trying to have these videos a bit tighter as well. So if you've got any questions, get them going.
Again, and I'm just, the reason I'm just such a loss for words is that this just again validates everything that they've been saying, and I think this is the one thing that, like, we've gotten mad at Google in the past about consistency and things and about how they say things and everything else. The one thing that's been consistent is that this game experience has been what they've talked about for about 6 months. There's no mistake here. There's no mistake on why they're going this route. They want to develop a living, breathing world where outcomes are possible in millions of variations. This is a different type of game experience that has never, ever seen the light of day on any platform. Microsoft's not doing it. PlayStation's not doing it. I'm not knocking them. Again, I'm just trying to be factual here, folks. No one else in the landscape right now is trying to do this type of an experience. And I really think we've really got to pay closer attention to when Google says these things. They're not mistakes, especially from the three largest folks that are part of that leadership area: Jack Buser, Jade Raymond, John Justice. They've said it repeatedly, and this just backs it up. And I'm just trying to hammer it home because I think we got to really believe them, folks. I think the game we're going to hear about when they talk about that big AAA game that's happening at Playa Vista that's being developed, it's this game. It's that MMORPG game that we're going to get. And I don't know what the timeline is now because this just changes everything. Again, all this stuff is just so fluid. Like, we learn new things. We find out that, well, they're trying to accelerate lead times. They're trying to accelerate testing. Like, all this stuff is just changing how we even think about gaming. It's a different thought process.
Yeah. So I just found this little series of a couple little paragraphs about using just a plain text to have the Fox do things. And I wanted to just read this because this is really interesting, right? If you guys don't mind, if that's okay.
Work away. Go.
Okay, so it says, so far the Fox has been following fairly simple instructions: say hello, pick up mug, etc. What happens if we ask something more elaborate? Kipnis shows us another list of instructions: get stoked, get some money, check out the weather, and see what the Fox does. In this example, Kipnis misspelled money, M-O-N-E-Y, as M-O-N-E-T.
Monet.
Yeah, Monet, right. So instead of getting confused and not doing anything in the face of an unfamiliar instruction, the Fox instead summons a painting. The quote is, I was a little surprised when this came out, says Kipnis, but the thing about semantic machine learning is that it's also aware of these cultural connections. And so, as you know, Monet was a painter. So if we say make some Monet, the Fox will respond by conjuring a painting. The coolest thing for me about this technology is it gives characters this inner life that it would have taken a ton of work for the developers to be able to put this in. As a developer, again, you don't have to anticipate every possible idea a player has.
Bingo.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier.
That's insane, man. That's just crazy.
What Trevicius is saying there as well. Every time you run a search on Google, you are programming that machine learning language. I mean, this is essentially what's happening here, okay? So when I put in, show me a painting by Monet, but I type it money by accident, for example, the what's happening behind here, the semantics ML goes, look, they're saying a painting, so they clearly didn't mean money. And all of that pre-programmed by us as searchers is essentially what they're tapping into with this game. It's effectively it. So, all of this is happening already within the search framework. And then we're taking the techniques and the data and this huge database of pre-programmed machine learning from us, the user, and applying it into a simple card game like this, but effectively any game that requires some level of interaction and integration with characters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's why I think that the MMO piece of it is massive, because that's what is one of the number one pieces to that game. It's interaction. It's moving around the environment, being able to get different outcomes based off of those interactions. And if it's not command based, where you only have, let's say it's 1,000 potential options, and you now expand it to millions upon millions based off of search algorithms and ML voice commands, nouns, verbs, synonyms. I mean, just all kinds of different variables that we can't even potentially rack our brain around. And I, Rokk had touched on this a couple weeks back about this type of information, that we were kind of hearing these rumblings that they were working on this stuff. And it's just fascinating to see that. It's fascinating to see how quickly that this is coming together. It's fascinating to see that this might be. Duncan, let me put something out here real quick on the table, and just very quickly, because this is, I think, a very interesting, thought-provoking piece for everybody.
Off you go.
This might be why they're choosing to move money into certain sectors or certain segments versus maybe right now not being as heavy on the marketing side, and maybe even on some of the other infrastructure pieces that I've read about recently that they've pulled their scale back on. So maybe they've invested their money in this stuff because they think that this is going to be their golden egg or their meal ticket, and this will speak for itself, I guess is the right way to say it. I don't know what anyone thinks about that, but this kind of changes how you have to look at what their long-term vision is. We knew they were going to build larger game experiences, but this is a much, again, we're talking about 1A and 1B. 1A was the base level understanding that they wanted to build different game experiences on this platform. 1B is taking it to the next level, using ML, using all kinds of different algorithms to achieve that are just almost uncomprehendable at this point to even just try to process in the human brain. So yeah. I guess that's where I want to open this up. I'm asking this as a thought-provoking piece. Is that why? Maybe Adam can jump in. Duncan, I know you probably will have your own thought on it. And I'm sorry, I just think this is a really important question. I just thought of it. Is this why Google is doing what they're doing right now? Is this what their focus is really on? This is our meal ticket. Forget everything else. Forget about what everyone else is doing out there. We know this is going to take over the industry. Do you think that's what it is?
Yeah, I do. And I think, the key thing here is that and you and I have said this a number of times, Chase, that, everyone is thinking very short term. Everybody's thinking, what are they doing next week? What are they doing next month? Google are thinking what they're doing in 5 years' time minimum. We've just seen that. It's just literally written in there in black and white. That's why they're not worried about the negativity they get from YouTube or, they're not even that worried about how many people are downloading the app. We are, because, we're all in a community and we want to see it grow and thrive. At this moment in time, that's not a big thing for them. This is very much, and this is how all startups work, as we've said before, and Google in particular. They're still in minimum viable product territory right now. This is early days about where they're going to be on a roadmap, some leagues hence from now. So yeah, and I also think they've probably ring-fenced the budget. We were saying in the last couple of days how marketing has been halved across Google. I think that you'll find that Stadia has been ring-fenced. I think that this is an incredibly important aspect for Alphabet moving forward, and they will have directed the budgets for what we're within our bubble right now sometime before, and I don't think that's been affected. I agree with you, Chase. This plays massively into the future of the company.
Yeah, well, what I think as well, this could I'll go for one of my wacky bold predictions. I think we may get a game this year. No, I think we're going to, and
it changes everything. It really does.
Compressed timelines.
Yeah, they've got a game done. If you read the article, it's a prototype game. It sounds like something I would play. It's Slay the Spire, and then you could rope in the crowd choice and state share into that, and that's bang. There is your show. a showcase game of what Stadia can do in the future. So I'm now backing off that we may actually get. I'm not talking a AAA game. I think we may get a smaller game.
Yeah, single or double A.
Yeah, just to show off this now. This is game changing. There we go for a slight pun. But here's something. Just while you were talking, Chase, this could actually introduce like the Netflix model where they can just pump out lots of small games now
for like money prices. That's what I've been saying.
That is interesting because, and as you say that right now, it just makes me think that what they can do is they can take one variation of a game. Let's just say that it's an MMO. They tweak 3 algorithms in it, right? So 3 different pieces of the ML, and now you've got potentially an FPS. That's not even the same stuff. I mean, the environment changes, and they showed. Trev actually mentioned this in the chat that at GDC last year they did show the entry level things of where they did the Monet painting and they did some of the other stuff in the background. There were some entry level pieces at that point that they showed us. This is not, though. What they're talking about in this article is beyond what they talked about last year. We're getting into much more nitty gritty, like brass tacks type of stuff here.
And what you're getting to there, Chase, is exactly again the point, the kind of crystal ball gazing that I did in my video, which is essentially, as you've just said, if you've got if you can fork out from a central idea, you've got an ability to create multiple games from a root. So you present that as a menu to a user, and the menu essentially says, would you like an MMO? Would you like a card game? Would you like a first-person shooter? Because ultimately we're going to put all this in the root and then create forks out to develop this game. I genuinely think that's the future. Silence. Mic drop, or was it just I bored you?
No, I don't have anything to add.
You're right though. I was checking out one of the comments. Was that Triceractor was saying that they do we know how developed this technology is? This is something that's going to always be a work in progress. It's never going to be just finished and that's it. This is something that they're going to always improve on, just like what Stadia is. It's never just a static thing. It's always going to be improved on. And this is just one of the things that's under the hood for it, that's going to grow with this platform too, and on its own.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so Trev is talking about down here that they did demo this stuff during the GDC web presentation. Again, they have shown some of these things, but they didn't take as deep of a dive as they're talking about in this article. Like, again, there's some things that were left out of even that presentation with the nouns and the verbs and mugs and everything else. We didn't get some of that stuff. They just kind of explained that they were doing coding where there could be different choices that could happen. But I mean, this just opens up so much different levels of pathways for. I almost dropped the F-bomb. Sorry.
It's a family show.
Yeah, I know. I had to stop.
F for family, right?
Guys, I would like your final thoughts on this. What do you think? Where does this leave Stadia now with this news and this further news? Even if does anybody want to go first?
I mean, like sorry, Chase. I would just say, touching on what you're saying, Duncan, and what you've just said, Chase. I don't think it matters if we say the same things every couple of months, because we're developing the thought processes. We're seeing more information coming forward. We're going to be talking about demos that were done 2 years ago, because as we piece more and more of the jigsaw together, it'll make more and more sense, and we can revisit what we know and add and embellish to that. So I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, to continue to have a discourse about stuff that we've talked about over time. I think what it doesn't make any difference at all to as far as the roadmap for Stadia is concerned, because this has been there for the years prior to us even knowing about Stadia. I think what it does is it helps us as consumers to get a feel for what we've invested in, and the fact that it is long term, that we're not going to suddenly get dropped, and that what we've always dreamed of as individuals in terms of that kind of Star Trek-y future is absolutely coming with this platform, and it can't be brought forth from any other platform currently.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, just agreeing with what Rock is saying. I feel like this is just one more thing that's knocking down that narrative that, oh, Google's going to give up on this in a couple of years and it's going to go away. Then what's going to happen to your games? Because people are still saying that out there in the larger gaming community, and it's just this is just something that's reinforcing that they're not just in this for the right now. They're in this for the long haul, and we're going to see this thing grow. And from there, we're going to see a lot more acceptance of it, because it's just you won't be able to deny it after a good amount of time, especially when you start seeing how this is going to be implemented in the games down the line that you won't be able to see in other consoles and in other even in PC gaming. So this is one of those things that's gonna solidify what Stadia is and how it's gonna lead the gaming market at some point.
Yeah, 100%.
Chase, your final thoughts?
Chase is processing. Just let him have a second.
Okay.
It's not a tumor. It is my brain. It's functioning as we speak.
Well said, Rev. It's just, I think for me, the big thing is we made a joke last night in a different way, but I think Google is who they said they are. You know, they've said for 6 months that they were going to be working towards a 24/7 living, breathing world. I think this just further solidifies that that's the track that they're on, that they're heading in that direction, that we just need to buckle up and get ready, because we're going to see an experience that I don't think any of us are prepared for. I think it's fascinating that lead times are going to change. We're going to have to rethink about what Stadia is versus the rest of the gaming landscape, because this is going to change things. And I think the massive takeaway that everyone's had has been kind of the same. The machine learning aspect with just word choice and nouns and verbs, and the balance testing that is capable with this type of AI is just this is next gen stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna label something next gen, this is what we should label next gen. Not necessarily the server blade. Like, I think we need to get away from that. Like, leave the blade alone. And again, I've talked about that before. Stop talking about the K's and the P's. As long as you're on track with the rest of the market, then that's fine. People aren't necessarily going to care. But this is what you should be talking about. This is the next gen, the next frontier, the Star Trek to the Star Wars comparison that Rokk made earlier. This is where Captain Kirk was always wanted to go in his lifetime, but never had the chance to make it there.
Yeah, he's out of his Vulcan mind.
He's out of his Vulcan mind.
What is your Vulcan mind?
Out of your Vulcan mind, Spock.
It's crazy stuff, Duncan, and I think we are. I think we're in for a treat, you know, as far as consumers. Like, and again, we're all consumers here, even us that are doing this podcast. We all want to enjoy this platform. So
yeah. My final thoughts are: this is just nuts. Just do it nice and succinct, and this is going to push things where we don't even know where they're going to go. We just have to be slightly worried if they do start doing cookie cutter sort of games.
Yes.
But that's going to be on the developers. They're going to be the ones that's going to be able to implement those tools. And we get to see them open up their imaginations. So the games that they always wanted to make, we're going to be able to see that in games that, you know, stuff that they weren't able to put in games because of limitations. Those things are going to be lifted now. So and I'm not saying like now as in like tomorrow, but I'm saying in the now and in the next few years. So we're going to see some really, really interesting games coming out of this, and that's just amazing.
Yeah, when I was talking about the cookie cutter, it's more if they go to Netflix, they're just trying to chuck as many games out as possible, and that's where I'm more concerned about. But this is going to be brilliant, and I do think we're going to get a smaller game this year now. I think I think we're now. If I was a betting man, I would bet that we would get a game this year.
Duncan!
You're a weak deck.
Man at arms.
So I think we'll leave it here, because I think we're going to be talking about this for weeks to come now.
I was just going to add something here, Duncan. This has been the best 2.5 weeks Google has had PR-wise. I really hope, and again, I'm holding out my heart of hearts, but I'm really hoping that this Connect is just that sugar on top of this amazing cake that we have. Because if they walk out with a mic drop moment on Tuesday, it's going to be real hard for the narrative to change going into the summer. And I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good.
Can I just ask you, just to give a quick brief thing about your channel, sir? Do your plugging away, and I'll start Stadia Weekly One. Do you want to start with you? We'll give a rundown of your channel, where to find you on Twitter and everywhere.
Okay, so yeah, my channel is, I go by the name of Stadia Weekly One. I'm still thinking about that part, but the channel is the Stadia Revolution. And because I named it that, because this is revolutionary technology in the gaming space, and we're going to start seeing that. You can find me YouTube /C/Stadia Weekly One. You can find me on Twitter. It says at SFounder 2019, and I have a Facebook group called the Stadia Revolution. So look it up, join in, and let's get this conversation going.
Rokk, what about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Duncan. Thanks for inviting me on as well. So it's /Stadia Rocks on YouTube, at Stadia Rocks on Twitter. What I try and do is a Rock Around the Clock show every other day, which is essentially a magazine with some news, views, analysis, chat. And I've got Generation X coming up on Tuesday with Clive Illenden, and that's basically a couple of old gits talking about their gaming of the past. Which is quite fun, and of course showing up whenever I'm blessed and honoured to be asked on shows like this and with Chase. And just wanted to say as well, I'm really pleased to meet you as well, Stadia Weekly One. It's the first time we've been on something together, and hopefully many more to come.
Yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to that, man. That's going to be awesome.
It's a revolution, baby. That's what I'm gonna say. It's such a great name, Weekly. I love it.
Thank you.
It's good.
Yeah, you can. I'll keep mine simple. You can find me over at youtube.com/Stadia Talk, and you can find me on Twitter at Phantom UFC Fan. And before Duncan tries to change the narrative, which he loves to do, that does not mean that I'm a Man United fan. So stop it.
He's very much a whiskey fan.
Yeah.
Man, too.
I just want to thank you guys for coming on here today. I want to thank everybody in chat for coming to watch this video, and if you're watching it later, thank you for watching it. We will be doing a video on Tuesday. We will be live streaming. We're going to be digesting the news from the Stadia Connect. I think a lot of people's doing lots of different things, so there's going to be tons of content out there.
Actually, let him plug, because I know me and Eddie are doing one, but make sure that aren't you doing a live stream, Rev?
Yeah, I'm doing a live reaction watch on the on my channel on Tuesday. So yeah, I'm gonna clock in for work a couple hours, and then hop off, so we can all watch this together. So if anybody that's not watching on Stadia Talk or any of the other channels, they can come to my channel, and we can watch it and live react together. It'll be great conversation.
Or have two web browsers open and simulcast. It would be amazing.
That'd be dope, right?
You have like 5 different people. You're not going to know what to do because everyone's probably going to be saying the same thing. But I just wanted to make sure you plug that because I knew you were doing a live one. So
yeah,
that's what we're all here for. We're here to encourage everybody else
already, because I already got it up, so they can set the reminder.
Yep,
for that if they want to.
My bad, Duncan. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that's what we're here for. We're all here to. It's a community. Everybody, we're not trying to steal viewers off each other or views or anything. Everybody's got their own style, so everybody plug away and just go back to us. We're going to be doing a more measured approach after, and then everybody do their live reactions during it.
Measured. Interesting choice of words. I love it, Duncan.
Yeah.
We're gonna be on hype overload. That's just
man.
I'm sticking my fork in the sand on that.
I don't even want to think hype right now. I can't take any more hype.
Look, man, I just look, as far as this Connect is concerned, I'm really excited for it. I know everybody's been saying, they want to take a measured approach to it and they want to, just take it as it is. But it's just the fact that, for me, it's just the fact that this thing even exists and is coming up means that they have something that they've been playing close to the chest and that we're going to be really happy about. So that part in and of itself has got me really excited to see what that is.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I can't see why. I mean, otherwise they just do. Oh, we've got a community blog coming out on Tuesday. Go and have a read. This is special.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all looking forward to it anyway. I think we're all in agreement on that. So I just want to thank everybody for coming and joining. If anybody wants to send Chase some whiskey, work away.
Also, one last thing.
Yes.
The thing to be really excited about is not even the Connect, man. That's just the icing on the cake. The cake is we get Monopoly on Tuesday. So
yeah,
we're gonna that's the event right there. And this Connect is just the icing on the layers,
Maybe that's the Connect announcing Monopoly. There you go.
That better not be the Connect, by the way.
I'll be the hat.
Oh, that would be amazing. Imagine.
There you go. And they all sat around the board going, but you can do this virtually. Don't pass go.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That is so awesome. It's always a good time when we get together, man. That's why I love this community.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So again, thank you all for coming. I've been saying that for the last 20 minutes.
He's trying to get rid of us, guys. Look, he's desperate. He's just too good a host.
But thank you all for watching, and see you for next time.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Everybody, we're back.
Take care, guys.
Bye, everybody. I almost did. Bye.